Welcome to the Canadian Team Cattle Penning Association's officials seminar via video. Welcome everybody. We're going to try and not use up your valuable time, so we're going to get right into it. I want to make a couple of points right off. We're going to follow the rule book in the teaching discussion today, but we're not going to read the rules. We assume that you have a comfortable understanding of the rules of the sport, and we're going to fine-tune that understanding so that you can do the very best job you can do acting as one of our valued officials. I always remind people at the start of these seminars that team penning is a timed event, and the judges, the line official and the head judge, are necessary evils to enforce some rules and keep the level playing field. But we want to keep it as much of a timed event as we can, which means you're not the stars, stay out of sight, do your job. Hopefully we're going to roll right through here, but if I fail to cover something or I confuse you in something I said, the first thing you want to do is send a note or give a phone call to Tammy in the CTCPA office, and she'll pass your questions on to Ken Crawford, and he'll either answer them or maybe he'll refer something to me. But that'll be the process. Any questions, don't hesitate to get a hold of Tammy, and we'll roll. Okay, team penning, current rules. The rule book starts out with the general rule, and basically it just defines that there is a judge and a line official, and it clarifies that the only decisions that a line official can make is to drop the flag on the start and to call trash. Now we say only, and I say that a little bit facetiously because the line official plays a very key role in penning. In fact, an awful lot of time they'll have more action than the judge. So I know the Canadian Association wants to emphasize we need really, really talented, skilled line officials. In that vein, we want to talk just a little bit about the line official's duties. So like I said, it's the start time and it's to indicate trash. If you want to be a successful line official, we want to make sure you come to this game with 4 things: a flag, a stopwatch, a whistle, and a number counter. And all of those are going to be used by you virtually, well, except for the whistle, virtually every run. So flag, stopwatch. Why the stopwatch? Because you are going to save the judge and the timer and the announcer, I don't know how many times in the day, but always 1 and sometimes 10 depending on what's happening. You are the backup timer, and a lot of times you will be referenced for your time because of some confusion that may happen in terms of clearing of trash or just any failure at the timer's box. The cattle number counter, again, it saves the judge from writing down numbers. If you're standing on the line and you hear the number called and you reach down and that number's already been, you can immediately signal to the judge that number has already been used, and we can do it as a restart then instead of a rerun working on the wrong cattle. Flagging is extremely important, and we want to just, hopefully I'm in the camera there. If you're a judge at the line, the head judge, I recommend using 2 hands, holding the flag like that and just letting it go when you're stopping time. And that's pretty easy, and that's by far the most efficient way because the flag is activated immediately. On the line, the line official has a lot of things happening. And remember, we're doing a backup watch, and we're working our cattle count. So the action for the line official is always one hand, but one hand raised and always go straight forward, right? The bad timing happens as a result of bad habits on the line, especially when a line official will want to activate their flag by going backwards before they go. And if you're going backwards, the poor timer, head timer, has no idea whether you're taking your flag away, which we ask you to do, or starting to come forward. So anything, you get a comfortable position. When your flag is in the air, the only actions you should do is, if you're going to stop time, come forward, no backward cocking of the flag. If your flag is not going to stop time, i.e. the trash is cleared, we want you to simply take it away. Take it away. If trash occurs, then we want you, because your flag is already up, when trash is happening, then we want you to boldly go like this. Don't be cute with your flag and go, just a neat little thing. Make sure that it's bold for everybody to see. The only other thing we'll remind you of is your flag is in the air 100% of the time when there is a dirty animal across the line. So any animal that is on the pen side of the line that is not the correct number, the whole time that happens, your flag is to be in the air. That alerts the officials, the timer, the announcer, the judge, and it also alerts the team that they are dirty. So we want you absolutely to have your flag in the air 100% of the time that there is a bad animal on the pen side. If it clears and it's not to be stopping time, you take it away. The only time your flag goes forward is if your flag is going to stop time. Okay, a few more points on the general rule of judges. Line officials cannot be given extra authority. So it's not that the show operator or the head judge says, you go ahead and call roughing if you see it. It just doesn't happen. The judge is the only person authorized to make any call, with the exception of the trash rule. Okay, let's get into it. Rule number 1, team of 3 riders, and you're a rider once you're in the pen on your horse. The rule allows you to compete with 2 riders anytime but the first round. The first round, you must have 3 riders to start the clock. Any other round, be it second, third, or fourth, you're allowed to go with 2 riders. The rule also says that you have 30 seconds to be ready. Only the judge, no other person, dictates when that 30 seconds starts and when it's over. And the only other thing that it reminds you that you cannot enter the arena, your partner cannot, or team member cannot enter the arena through the gate after the clock has started. It becomes a non-player. Rule number 2 is timing, and it's a very specific thing. You have a time limit, and you must pen the cattle within the time limit. Most people have caught on to this now, but just for clarification, if your time limit is 60 seconds, then you must pen them before that 60 seconds happens. So 59.99. And the easiest way to remember that is it's like a hockey game. If you score at 19:59.99 of the period, it's a goal. If you score at 20:00, it's not a goal. It's that the time has expired. 30-second warning is a courtesy warning. It doesn't have to happen every time, and it does not have to be consistent. It's just a courtesy, and it has no impact on any other decision. We recommend that when you're setting the final buzzer, that if the time limit is 60 seconds, don't set it at 60 seconds. Set it at 60.01 or 60.1 or even 61 seconds. Then when the clock stops, everybody can see. It's really easy for them to look up and see that, oh, I was 300ths too slow, or maybe 30 hundredths too slow. But it's easier if you do that as a help to all the competitors, that they think, oh, I just missed. You can show them how much they actually missed by. One more key thing. The rule clearly says that the clock, not the judge, determines the time. So the judge will drop their flag. The timer will click when that flag is dropped. The judge is not allowed to adjust the time if they think the time keeper was slow. However, the judge can refer to any other clock to get information. So if the time expired and the judge says, gee, I was sure that my flag dropped early, then you can refer to a backup clock or the key clock, the clock that is in the hand of the lines person. Refer to them. The judge can choose what clock is the correct time, but they cannot make up a time. If you don't have a clock that says that the team got a qualified time, they cannot give them one. Absolutely never. Rule 3 is the third size. It talks about herd size being 30. That's normally what happens in most of the pennings in Canada. But what it really means is a standard size. So if you don't have 30 head of cattle for every herd, you can go 27 head, 24 head, 21 head, but all the herds have to be the same size. So sometimes you have to divide up your cattle, especially now when it's tough to get them, but all herds have to be the same size. When you have a herd, the rule does not demand that you always have, and we're going to talk about 30. The rule book doesn't insist that you compete with 30 head if an animal has been taken out because of an injury or if an animal has escaped from the herd. So you've started with 30, that's the rule. When a cow gets hurt, the rule says you must take it out immediately if it's showing injury. You don't have to replace it because that takes time to renumber a number 4 or whatever. And the same applies if a cow escapes from the pen or from the arena. If it jumps over the fence, you don't have to run around and chase it back in before you can continue. If that number has been used, then that's okay. If it hasn't been used, then you just drop the number. So then the rule number 3 also talks about when the herd is bad, wrongly numbered, right? So there are more or less of a particular number in the herd. So you might have 3 4s or you might have 2 6s. What you have to do when you notice that is fix the herd. And besides fixing the herd, you have to fix the times, of the teams that competed on the numbers that were incorrect. So if you have 4 number 2s and 2 number 3s, and those runs have already happened, you have to give those teams a rerun. They don't have a choice. They can take either 0. They cannot take the time that they got. They have to be given a rerun. They're given a rerun on the same number at the end of that herd after it's been fixed accordingly. Anybody that gets a time on any other animal except for the ones that had too few or too many, their times stay as they were. If in a herd something happens that a number is used twice on the herd, again we're hoping, we're depending on the line official to tell us, oh, that number 5 has already been used. But under no circumstance can the team that is second to chase that number ever keep their time. They run, if we can stop them immediately when the repeat number is called, then we'll just give them a restart and we'll give them their correct number. If they chase the number and we don't get them stopped early in the run, then we'll just eliminate whatever happened on that run. It never happened, and we give them a rerun on the correct numbered animals at the end of the herd. Rule number 4 is a simple management one: consistent changing of herds. The rule says that you should use all the cattle in the herd, or in each herd. That applies only if you don't have to eliminate one number in a herd because of an injury or a bad number or something like that. But if there's a no-show in a particular herd, then you just move the next team up, and it's called luck of the draw. And it's just the latest draw is the one that you're called into the ring for, and that's how it happens. For good management, if you're not going to run continuous all the way through the show, then management would dictate that you announce that you're changing to a new herd after each class or after each round, or that you're only using 6 numbers per herd. You can do any of those if you announce it. Rule number 5, it's called the herd ready rule, and this is a start. To start the run, cattle are to be unified and settled between the markers. That's the requirement for the line official to raise their flag. Unified means no gaps, so you don't have 3 here in a space and 20 here and 3 more over here. They are basically within contact of each other and between the markers. Settled is a thing anymore because cattle don't stay where they are very long. So settled means that there's not cattle leaving the herd. You can be assumed to be settled if you're between the markers and pointing, I guess, nose to the herd rather than nose leaving the herd. So that's what it is. Once the cattle are unified and settled, the line official is to raise their flag immediately, and we encourage them to actually anticipate the cattle being ready, because again, the fairest thing is heading for the cattle as they're bunching up, not bunched up, because they don't stay bunched very long. So we encourage anticipation, but we raise the flag whenever we say that the cattle are unified and settled, and it doesn't matter whether the team is ready or not. That's the signal to the thing that the team should be at the line and ready to go. The rule says that the teams are expected to move promptly into position. It also says that they must, emphasize must, proceed immediately if instructed to by either judge. So some people get that confused, that they have 30 seconds to go. That's the maximum time that they have between runs. But if the cattle are ready and the line official raises their flag, if the judge or the line official says go now, it's not a matter of you get to cherry pick on that line for the rest of your 30 seconds. If they say go, you go. A new rule, one of the few that was added this year, is concerning the next part of the rule, that an official may grant, emphasize may, grant a short rest of no more than 30 seconds between runs on a back-to-back run. It's at the discretion of the officials, and really should be the discretion of the judge if they assess that the person needs a rest. And the problem is, we want to be quite firm on this rule, because we don't want everybody taking a rest, right? Because it's just not necessary. And we always fall back in the thing. It always seems that riders request a rest only if they're going 9th or 10th in the herd. If they're in the first 7 or 8 runs in the herd, they don't need a rest, but they always seem to need a rest on that 9th or 10th. And so the Canadian Association has recognized that, and they've implemented an addition to the rule. So the new rule reads that if a rest is granted between runs on a back-to-back run for any of the riders, that during that entire rest, the entire team must face the pen rather than the cattle. So there's no option of them sitting on the line cherry-picking while their exhausted partner is ticking off that 30 seconds. So again, if anytime a rest is granted to a team under the new rules, the team being given the rest period must turn their horses and face the pen rather than face the herd. So a very simple point there. But again, judges, set your standards, and if a person really needs a rest, give it to them. And it might be the horse that needs the rest, or it might be the person that needs the rest, but be reasonable and set your standards. Rule 5 also says that time begins with the nose, and that's only because sometimes you get a horse that's fractious on the line or something, and is out of control and sort of backs over the line. You don't want to count that as a starting the clock. So that's why that. And then the final point of this rule number 5, ready, is the rule says that the announcer will frequently announce the number. And we want to get very clear with all our announcers, and as judges you want to insist that your announcers have the same habit. And what we say is standard format is saying the number, cattle number sponsored by, if you want to do that. So 4, cattle number 4 sponsored by. A lot of announcers try to develop their own standards, but the problem is they talk too much before they actually say the number. Look, we do short arenas, and we're doing short fowl lines or cattle lines, and so if you simply tick it off, and the announcer says your number is 4, your number is 4. By the time that announcer said your number is 4, the proper format of 4, cattle number 4, the announcer has given you your number 3 times in the same time it took the announcer to say your cattle number is 4. And that's very important. And so you want your announcer to say it every time, and you want them to have the same routine. 4, cattle number 4. And send in your cards if you're an announcer and don't like that. Rule number 6 is part of the once committed rule, and it's simply stated, once the clock has started, it's luck of the draw. And if something happens that is bad luck, it's just bad luck. Once you cross that line, whatever cattle you meet in terms of they might be wild, or they might be tired, or they might be be bunched up and hard to thing. It's your cattle. The only other thing Rule 6 says is animals leaving the arena through a fence or a gate, and they want to clarify that if an animal or if a gate opens accidentally and you haven't chased the cattle through that gate, then you might get a rewrite. If you chase the cattle through, the judge will likely, basically by hard contact, the judge will probably call you for roughing. If an animal jumps over the fence and you weren't chasing it to make it go over the fence, then the judge has an option again of saying, okay, it went over because you chased it, no reride. It went over, but you weren't chasing it, you will get a reride. Judge's discretion every time. Rule number 7, trash. This is one of the two. I mean, this is what happens to a team on almost 60% of the runs, is you have a dirty over the line. The rule says if you get more than 4 ahead, you've trashed out. If you get more than 1 unassigned animal at any one time, you've trashed out. And the rule clarifies that over the line is all 4 feet. So if we're doing the line, and I'll use my long cow that looks more like a dog, but if you can see, the cow is now on the herd side of the line. The pen is over here, the herd side is here. The rule says that all animals are considered to be on the herd side until that animal places all 4 feet across the line on the pen side. Once it places all 4 feet across on the pen side, then it's considered to be on the pen side, so dirty, until it again moves all 4 feet back across to the herd side. So you're on the herd side until you move all 4 feet to the pen side. Once you're on the pen side, then you're considered to be there until all 4 legs get over. So if we're going like this, we're going like this, we're going like this, we have all those things where the cattle are tormenting the line and teasing the penners. It doesn't matter. The line official is looking for that 4th leg to be over to count that cow. And sometimes you're getting into a case where, and this is the line official's nightmare, is when the cattle are coming like this, and so this one we know is dirty, and this is trying to be dirty, and we're trying to see if there's any point where we have 2 dirties on the over on the pen side at any one time. Simple rule of thumb: look only at the tails. Okay, so that's the secret to doing it. Don't try and see where the animals are. Watch the tails, and if you've got 2 tails over onto the pen side at one time, then they're dirty. If you haven't got those 2 tails going in opposite directions on that pen side, then you're not dirty. And that happens probably only once or twice a show, but it happens, and it's a tough one. Now remember again, anytime that we're dirty, that we have 1 trash over the line official has got his watch in hand, and he or she has their flag up to tell everybody in the pen that you're dirty. The thing is as that cow, and we've all seen it, and the thing is that unless you're on that line, because there's nothing on the ground, unless you're right parallel with that line, you can't really see honestly whether the cattle are right across the line or not. So that's why that line official, they're looking straight across the arena, and I recommend pointing your flag at it so that you've got that lined up. And as long as your flag is down or pointed forward, the team and the judge and everybody in the world knows that, nope, not dirty yet. And sometimes it looks like they're dirty, right? Because it's a visual distortion. But if you got that really smart, talented, good-looking line official pointing that flag, that's big confidence. You know they're paying attention. They've got locked in on that straight line. And if that flag doesn't go up in the air to say dirty, then you'll know the team is lucky. Those cattle are teasing the line, but none of them fit into the definition of all 4 feet across. So remember that. Be confident in your line official, because even the judges cannot see that line clearly enough because of the visual distortion. Rule number 8 is a quickie. Wrong numbered cow in the pen. The only thing that the rule says is that to be wrong number in the pen to be DQ'd, all 4 feet have to be in through the pen. And I'm going to tell you, use your team, because you'll probably be watching a lot of things if you're judge. Use your announcer and your timer, who are generally sitting close to you, to keep alerting you to the fact that a dirty one is near the pen or starting to enter the pen. But do not let those people make the call. There's nothing more embarrassing, and you know, we all get to work with some fabulous timers and announcers, but sometimes they anticipate. And if they're looking at that dirty coming in the pan and they blow the horn or say no time or something, and that inevitably that cow stops with 3 legs in the pen and just stands there, and it's just standing there for the whole world to see that no, it didn't go all in the pen, but the team made the call. You insist that your announcers and timers help you, but don't blow that horn, because they're going to make you look bad. Rule number 9, calling time. It seems like such a simple rule, but we're always debating it. You can call for time with 1 or more head in the arena, or in the pen, by having a combination of your horse's nose on the inside of the pen, so breaking the plane of the pen, and your hand raised in the air above shoulder level, right? So upward action. And I remind judges that if you're judging from way up high, sometimes it doesn't look like the rider has their hand over their shoulder, but it would be on level thing. So if you see this upward action, right, that they're obviously calling time, give them credit for that time. But the nose must be in the pen, the horse's nose of the person calling time. Now, calling time doesn't mean that the clock stops. So we call time when we're happy with having good animals in the pen, but we may still be dirty. In those cases, the judge, remember the line official over here, because there's a dirty, they've got their flag in the air. The judge is already talking to their announcer and their timer, saying something like "timer, be ready," and other flag, or my flag, and most of the time it's not close, so you can indicate. But if the judge if there's dirty and the judge is ready to call time, they do not drop their flag like this ever, right? Because that tells the timer, you've conditioned them the whole day that when your flag snaps, then stop the clock. So if you're dirty, instead of being ready to snap, then you don't activate your flag with one hand, and you're saying other flag, other flag, other flag. And then our brilliant line official will have their flag in the air, and they'll know, okay, I'm the one that's stopping the clock, down with the flag. So don't get into the thing of dropping your flag forward unless you're going to stop the clock. It's very unfair to the announcers and timers. The rule says that when time is called, and I will, because it came up a couple of times recently where somebody will call time on less than 3 head when the rest of the team doesn't want to. It's not a voting thing, right? If any time that there's an animal in the pen and somebody has the horse's nose in the pen and the hand up, the judge can only drop their flag. They can't listen out of the no, right? It's not the judge's fault. The rule says when you call time, all horses and riders must be on the pen side of the line. So remember what the pen side of the line is. If they're coming from the herd end, the horse has to have all 4 feet on the pen side coming over, and technically the rider has to have 2 feet on the line if they don't happen to be on their horse. All riders do not have to be mounted. The riders and the horses all have to be on the pen side, but they don't have to be mounted. And that's a key rule, and that was put in a few years ago for safety, and it does make a lot of sense. And then the only other thing that people have to remember is if we've called time at the pen and we're chasing trash around, one of the rules that was recently put in a year or two ago was that once time is called, if a horse or a rider subsequently goes across to the other side, to the herd side, before the trash clears, you are disqualified. It's just a rule. Don't try to interpret it. If you go across that line while after you've called time but before trash clears, then you are disqualified. Then the next one is to be considered in the pen, or to be considered pen, all 4 feet of the animal have to be in the pen. It's such a simple statement, but this is where we get the calling time too early. So the judge is in a perfect position all the time. They're exactly on the line, exactly in line with the opening of the pen, and frankly it's really easy to see whether the rider calls time too early or not. You know, you've got those 2 legs or half a cow or whatever sticking out. When that happens, you simply report the news. 2, and do it immediately. 2 head, or sometimes it's 1 head, or sometimes the time will be expiring and they take a chance and try to pen at least 1, and it'll be no head. But the judge is only reporting the news. The rider called the time when they called the time. The judge reports whether you get credit for all the cattle that were in that bunch or less. Don't make a big deal of it, judges. Just say 2 head. Anymore, the riders have pretty well been disciplining themselves. Instead of blaming the judge or that, they just look at their partner, and sometimes the partner just says, sorry. But don't make a spectacle of it. Just say 2 head. The announcer reports that it's 2 head, and that's all that happens. And because it always comes up, I don't know, again, a horse can go all the way into the pen, and a horse and rider can be sitting in the pen while other cattle are coming into the pen. So hopefully everybody understands that. So it's not for being into the pen too early, it's for having your horse's nose in the pen and your hand in the air. A rider can go in early, beat all the cattle into the pen, as long as they don't call time by raising their hand in the air. They can wait for the cattle to get into the pen, and then they or their partners can raise their hand. People get quite excited about the fact that they were in the pen too early. Nothing to do with it. It's when you legally call time before all those cattle get in. Rule number 10 is for herd holders. The rule specifically says you must have 2 herd holders. They immediately, their job is to settle and unify the herd between the markers, and that they must face and control the herd until the number is called. So not flags up, but number called, and they must be in position, which means near the herd. They can be outside the markers, but near the herd. So if something starts walking away or the judge needs something pushed in, they're in immediate position. But they must settle and unify, and they must face and continue to control the herd until the number is called. Then they must immediately exit along the wall. One of the most ignored, or not ignored, a rule that people sometimes refuse to acknowledge is the rule that says a herd holder's job is not to stir or bury any number. So your job is not to split pairs. Your job is not to draw, if you're the 9th or 10th draw on the herd and you know what 2 numbers are left, your job is not to chase them into the middle. You simply go, and oblivious of what numbers you are chasing, you bunch and unify, and never ever do you split pairs or try to bury a number that you know is going to be called. It's called unsportsmanlike, it's called interference, and the judge is to point it out every time. If they think that you're deliberately doing it, the judge is encouraged to stop, say, unify and settle, quit trying to split or bury the cattle, so that everybody knows that you are saying that they are acting in an unsportsmanlike manner, and then get on with it. Typically when you say that a couple of times, then they'll be at least a lot more discreet in their efforts. But generically, bunch the cattle together, get them unified, sit there and hold them, and do no other thing for fear that your name will be announced as unsportsmanlike. Rule number 11 is reruns and restarts. For reruns and restarts, there's only 2 reasons you get those. Mechanical failure, so the clock doesn't start, the lights go off, a gate is left open, or management error, they call the wrong number, they call number twice, there's a cow that breaks from the herd just before the flag goes down, all those things. And if we can fix it immediately, if we recognize it immediately, again, we depend on that line official for a lot of these things. And it also falls into place of if there's unintentional interference or intentional interference with the herd holders, that's all part of the game. If we can do it immediately, we just give them a restart. We do it on the correct number and go. If it happens during the run and something interferes, 2 things happen. The first thing that a judge has to do is say, look at the clock to know when that actual bad event occurred. It might happen at 15 seconds, it might happen at 30 seconds, it might happen at 40 seconds. That is their terms of reference when they grant a rerun. So if we're granting a rerun because of mechanical failure or management error, we're going to make the following decisions. We know what time it happened. If it was a matter of calling the wrong number, or calling a number that had either too few or too many, then it doesn't matter when you discover it. It's a fresh rerun, no penalties. It doesn't matter how long they chase the cattle. It's a complete fresh start, and they don't get a vote on it. If a vote in terms of whether they keep the time they got or not. Any other reason, you are to tell the team, okay, that particular bad event of the lights going out or a dog really coming in and interfering with your run happened at 47 seconds. And so you can't better your time, but I am offering you a rerun. But whatever you get the slower of 47 seconds or the time you take. And in some cases the team will actually say, no, we ended up getting it done in 52 seconds, so we'd rather keep our time. They can keep their time as long as it wasn't a case of penning on wrong numbered cattle or penning on cattle that had either too many or too few. If a team, and this is the only time the word polite is used in the rule book, if a team thinks that they were interfered with, the rule instructs them to, in a polite manner, declare to the judge that they're requesting a rerun before they leave the arena. If they do leave the arena, then in almost all cases the judge just says, no, you had to declare before you leave the arena. There's a lot of reasons for that type thing, because people leave the arena and then they get help from all the grandstand judges and that, and only then they decide that they've been wronged. And the other thing is that it's the only way that the officials make sure that they keep the herd in the arena, because on a rerun, of course, you're always going to run on your correct numbered animal. So if something happened when you were chasing the threes and the judge grants a rerun, then you're still going to chase on those threes. If we might have to fix a number, we might have to do a lot of things, but you're supposed to do at the end of the herd on the same number. And the judge has to make sure that there's no releasing of the herd until that happens. And this includes obscure numbers. So if a rider has a difficulty with a number, saying it was just impossible, there wasn't a number, there was a blank number, but we didn't know it was a 3, all those things, then the judge can look at that number and say, no, it wasn't blank. I can read it, so you should have been able to. Okay, Rule 11A is, again, part of the once committed, completely responsible once you start the clock. If you run into an animal that is exhausted from being previous trash, or if it's a wild animal, or if it's a blind in one eye animal, well, they try to sort all those out, but a lot of times an animal that has some vision problems won't be discovered until the third or fourth run. And the rule says once you go across the line, then you're committed to that, and the management team will, if it's a bad animal, they'll try to correct it so it's not used again. But it's your cow. This rule also says that the judge has the right to stop a run anytime that they think there's jeopardy, i.e. a rider or a horse or a cow hurt, and that there's no such thing as a rerun. If the judge stops it for safety reasons, then there's no rerun offered. The rule says that if an animal is injured, it should be removed immediately, and that's really important. But everything else is all about luck of the draw. Sometimes you get peelers, and sometimes you get pairs, and sometimes you get cows that look more like pigs, and that's just part of the game of penning that we all love. Rule 12 is hazing. Make a thing, contact or direct at with your reins, with your hat, shaking the pen. It's called hazing, and you're disqualified for that. You can wave your hand at a cow. You can actually stick out your feet and shake them if you want, as long as you're not kicking the cows. If you've got a romal or reins in your hand, the minute those reins are directed forward at the cows, you are hazing. That's the rule. If you got your hand out and stationary, you're not waving, then you're not hazing. But a lot of people just, if you catch your hat and because it's falling off, and then you're in the hole and the cows start coming at you and you go like this, it's unfortunate, but you're disqualified. There's no rule that says you cannot touch a cow with your hand in Canada. You cannot hit them. But if you hit or kick the cow, it's not hazing. It's either roughing or unsportsmanlike, and it's going to be dealt with that. Same way as if somebody reaches out and hits a cow with their reins or their romal, that's roughing or unsportsmanlike. You have a much more serious problem than hazing when you do that, and judges are encouraged to call it immediately. Rule 13 is falls of horse or rider. The rule is clear. Your partners can do anything that they wish to help you. If you fall off your horse, they can catch your horse, they can pick you up and put you on your horse. They can do all those things. Nobody else in the world can do anything. So if somebody enters the pen and touches you or your horse, or if somebody catches your horse along the rail to stop your horse, you are disqualified for outside assistance. And it's a tough rule. It's a tough rule because there's a lot of good Samaritans that will always jump in because they're worried about you and try and be helpful. And quite frankly, sometimes the only thing hurt is your pride. But the rule says your partners can help you, nobody else can assist you in any manner. And so sometimes, if the judge is convinced that it's only the pride of the person that's hurt, they become managers of the arena conditions. And they might have to, in concert with the announcers, say, leave them alone, they're okay, get out of the pen, don't touch, don't do all that, right? But if there's any question about the safety of the rider or the horse, just stop it. There'll be another day for all those people. Just stop it and take care of safety before anything else. No outside assistance. Roughing, the last of the big rules. Any significant contact with the cow, or any significant contact that the cow has with other cattle or walls or gates or backs of pens that are the result of chasing it, is roughing. Nobody said you intended to do it. You're just trying to get in position. You're trying to get the cow penned. You're trying to turn the cow. But if you are chasing the cow and contact with the horse happens, contact the cow to the wall happens, contact to the back of the pen happens, it's all roughing. And I think this is a good thing, right? This is what we all have to remember as we rent the cattle for all the sport that we love, and it's increasingly hard to do that. Virtually every part of that animal is what the provider of the cattle depends on to be able to market their animal. We don't want to put any bruises anywhere on that bottle. So we give you the tail, we give you the head, and quite frankly, we'll give you down the neck a little bit. But any significant contact here, or blunt force to the head, or stepping on the hind legs, is always going to be roughing. Cattle are the dumb animals, and yes, we know that you don't intend to hit it. Sometimes the cow will fall in front of you and all you do is ride over it. But if the cow falls, you're not going to be called for a roughing because the cow fell. You're going to be called because you stepped on it to cause it to fall, or you stepped on it and rode right over it after it fell. You can be chasing cows, and again, this is the cow, and I know it's a dog, but it's a cow today. Position-wise, anytime you're going in the same direction, horse and cow, contact, incidental contact, straight line is fine, right? No, you're not going to put bruises on a cow. Turning position is always in front of the shoulder, and that'll make the cow go around. Anybody that's making contact behind the shoulder. So again, if you get your horse up to where you're in turning position so you can actually turn in front of the shoulder, then a little bit of contact on that shoulder and on that head and neck is fine. But anybody that tries to turn the cow by pressing on the barrel of the cow this way, or even greater significance as we're changing the angle, so anything but straight, as we're changing the angle, where we're bumping the cow to make it turn this way on the hind legs or this way on the front legs, is roughing. Every time you hit a cow with any force between this area, whether it's standing still or moving, should be called roughing. And a lot of times, a lot of unanticipated things happen. You can have this cow standing there, and it's the right cow, and you head towards it, and you know that it's going to move forward, right? Because all cows, you're spooking it, and you anticipate it moving forward. If it moves forward, like it should most of the time, all's good. But if that cow stands there, and you anticipated it moving forward, and it didn't, and you hit it, it's roughing. Not your intention. Understand, it's roughing, and you cannot make contact. If you're chasing a cow and you're chasing at the length of the arena and it crashes into the fence, and you say, but I gave it lots of room. Like so you're chasing, and you say, it's going to run into the fence, and so you back off a little bit. If that cow still jumps into the fence, it's roughing. It means you didn't back off fast enough. And remember again, the cow is the dumb animal. And one of the problems that we face all the time is that cows are totally monocular vision animals. And while horses have a little bit of binocular vision, they can get, when they raise their heads like this, they're getting pieces of binocular vision. Cows are strictly monocular, so they have a really poor depth perception. The easiest way to understand this is if we go like this. So this is flat land, this is a little ditch. How do horses go through this? Like this. Riding, and a horse will jump this ditch. That's what a horse will always do. If you've seen cattle do the same thing, more often than not, they won't jump. What they'll do is they'll go along, and because they've got monocular vision, they don't have depth perception, they go along, and they'll ride into the ditch and out of the ditch. Even if it's only 2 feet, they'll still trample in that. That same monocular vision comes into play when the cow is running straight down the wall. Remember, cattle operate on either fear, fight, or flight. So if they'll either try to run away from you or they'll fight you. If they're running away from you and they're running down that arena wall, they don't really see that this is 6 feet tall and that they're not going to be able to clear it. All they see is that there's little spaces between the bars and that they're ahead of you right now, but they don't want you to catch them. Again, fear. And so if they jump and crash into that, and you say, well, but I backed off in time that they could have turned. Remember, a dumb animal. All they know is they were winning, and they're trying to get ahead of you, and they don't really understand that they're not capable of either jumping this fence or fitting through that small space. So remember that. It's the same thing as if you're riding across the arena, and this dumb cow has all the space over here, but instead you're locked onto it, and you're not able to get up into that turning position. And even though all this space is here, it would rather run across the arena and slam into that fence. It's roughing. When we get to the hole, and before I say that, head-to-head contact is real, or shoulder-to-shoulder in opposite directions, is the only time where a judge can accept that the cow hit you. So if it runs right at you, or there's shoulder-to-shoulder contact, that's the only time that a cow hit you. Every other time, it has to be assumed that you hit the cow. A lot of these things happen in the hole or at the wing where the cow is trying to get by you. If there's shoulder-to-shoulder or head-to-head contact, and basically in opposite directions, you're going to give a little bit of leeway, because remember that contact with that head isn't going to really do as much. But that's the only time. If that cow is coming through the wing or the hole and it gets this space, you've opened the door. And so this kind of contact is not going to harm the cow, and it's going to be safe horse and rider. But if it gets through the hole and you end up doing it any kind of a broadside, it means you're late. That's all I'm going to say. It means you're late and you've roughed the cow. If you slam it or you drive it into that side wall, it's still roughing. And then the same goes when we're chasing the cows into the pen. If this cow, you're locked onto the cow, and it slams into the back of the fence, then it's roughing. And I'm going to tell you that the rule of thumb is if you chase it and you didn't enter the pen, a judge is going to be a lot more liberal about the fact that you were chasing it too hard or too fast or too dangerously than if you enter the pen with the cow. The pen is supposed to be the sanctuary, safe place for the cows, and while the rule says you can ride into the pen, every time you ride with force into the pen, you're reducing the space of safe haven for those cattle, and they're going to jump. Another incident is you're chasing this cow, and it runs and it slams into the side of another cow or into the butt end of another cow and knocks it down. Yes, this is the one that got roughed. You were chasing this one, but you are responsible for all 30 head in the pen. So if you're chasing a cow where its only option is to, or the only result is for it to run into another animal, That is roughing. If you have cattle running out in the middle of the arena, and either one person is chasing one cow or two people are chasing the two cows, and they collide, it's roughing. Even if nobody's chasing this cow, if you're only chasing this cow and it runs into that cow, it's roughing. There's no excuse. There's no forgiveness for animals. And it's if we want to keep our sport going, we're just going to have to demonstrate to the public and to all the cattle suppliers that we care about the animals, and it's just roughing. You know, we didn't say you were a criminal. We didn't say you did bad. We said you were late. You lost position, and you didn't get it done. Accept your punishment. Just no time. Rule 15, and it's very timely that unsportsmanlike follows roughing. Abuse of the horse or the cow, or disrespect to your fellow competitors or any official, then you'll be called for unsportsmanlike conduct. The penalty is severe. You forfeit all entry fees for the day, and you'll be subject to other penalties from your local association and or the Canadian Association. But there's a lot of times where you get heat of the moment, and even the nicest people occasionally curse you or you know, they feel wronged. Judges have to stay sane, but don't accept any abuse of any kind. And sometimes you just go like this, and it's sort of a universal, quit your talking, right? Get out, give a very simple explanation, but do not let anybody ride you for any reason, even if you're wrong, right? Take care of the situation, and don't, because I'm telling you that the other 99% of the people are watching to see if you know, they'll tolerate it. And most of the time, they're cheering for you. If you've been doing a pretty good job, they're cheering for you, and they don't want riders to bully officials or beat up their horse or rough the cattle or be obnoxious with fellow penners or anything else. And like I say, unsportsmanlike conduct where you forfeit everything is really severe. I'm suggesting that unless it's a really bad case, I would first try a public announcement that you know, Ken Crawford has been given an unsportsmanlike conduct warning. And if you say unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, or say warning instead of penalty, then okay, you're still alive, but you're on the edge. Anything else, if you continue, if you do anything more, you're gone. And those publicly announced warnings, it tells the people you've taken care of business, and it warns the actual competitor that, no, you've made your decision, it's all over. Do that. Rule number 16 is spotting, and it's simple. If you're not on the team and you deliberately indicate the location of an animal, then you are spotting, and you are subject to being thrown out of the competition and the team disqualified. And the Canadian group a year ago made special effort to say that, hey, we're not stupid. You know, when you got a code that says look, go, or ride, and we all know that means they're on the left for look, and they're at the gate for go, and they're on the right for ride, or anything else. If you see any sort of a competitive code, then you're not going to be in the sport anymore. They're going to take very serious action. Now, judges should be careful to make sure that they understand who's doing this spotting type thing, because it might be that somebody's trying to get the team disqualified. Or it might be that innocent spectator, right? When you go to some of our big events where we're getting literally thousands of people, which there's nothing better than getting thousands of people watching our sport. And the spectator that lacks some knowledge wants to help you, and so they ignorantly say, or innocently say, it's the red one in the corner, or that. Then we're not going to take action on that. A good announcer will say, thank you for your help, but we just can't tell them where it is. Spotting does not include any warnings to say, look behind you or back door or anything like that, right? It's strictly, spotting is identification of where your correct animals are. It ends there. Rule 17 is an easy one. It's continuing to work. It says the judge can announce a fine of $30 if the rider continues to work after the run is over. You can also be called for unsportsmanlike or roughing. Rule 18, unattended horses, has nothing to do with the judges. Let the show management look after that. Rule 19 is always my favorite one. It says the decisions of the judges are final, and that it can't be, and nobody can tell the judge to change their rule. I remind you to look at the tiebreaker rule, because it's not quite, and these are just housekeeping notes. Look at the tiebreaker rule regarding riders and teams type thing to see how, for the rider, the tiebreaker rule is managed just the same as the junior youth class, where the rider can pick a partner to help them, but the rider takes on the position of junior youth. They have to do the sorting from thing, and they have to call time. Youth class, make sure that the senior youth class is run the same as anything else. Junior youth class, very specific rules that you want to remember. They have to have a helmet. And nobody in the world, parents can't sign waivers, show management can't say, oh, well, we'll let it go next time, but do it. Assurance and safety and just doing the right thing says that if the junior youth doesn't have a helmet on their head, they can't compete, period. And never waver from that rule. It doesn't matter about the crocodile tears. The only other thing about the junior youth class is make sure the rule very clearly says that initially the junior youth has to do the majority of the separating on each of the animals. What that means is that the adult can help them, but the junior has to identify the animal and do the majority of the work at pointing, and the adult is an aid. The adult can never be the first one to go in and cut out an animal, including volunteers. And it's one of those, you hate to do it, but you got to do it every time. If those adults separate any of the cattle themselves that have not previously been chased by the youth, it's a DQ. And it's just the adult committed the fault. You're just reporting the news. Dress code, we all understand dress code. Remember that anybody can wear a helmet instead of a cowboy hat, and that it says jeans, but it clearly says no tears in the jeans. So your $600 pair of jeans that you preciously put fancy holes in look good on you after hours, but not in the pen. The only other rule that we'll talk about, and this is another change, is in the show management rules. It talks about numbering cattle, and it tells you about the size of the numbers and the numbers that are to be used. Two little add-ons that are critical for fairness of competition is that the rule book now instructs that the numbers are to be put behind the shoulder. We get a lot of these animals that are sloppily numbered, and the numbers are put up on the neck or across the shoulder, and they break and come off, and they're hard to read and all that. So numbers are to be placed on the animal behind the point of the shoulder. And when the herds come into the arena, any numbers that are identified as too tough to read, i.e. flopping or missing or crinkled to the point where they're unreadable, then they're not to be used. They're to be skipped in that herd. So if number 1 is floppy or severely wrinkled or so dirty that you can't read it, and the herd holders identify it as the herd comes in, and that should be all part of the first. The herd holders looking after a new herd must be checking for that. They show the judge makes a ruling, it's good to go. If it's crinkled or something like that, then if the judge believes it can be read, then you can still have the announcer say that there's a red heifer with a crinkled number 1, be alert. But if it's flopping, just or missing, then just announce that you're not using the number 5s in this herd, and make sure that the message gets back to the herd handlers behind to change that number. Again, it's judge's discretion, but it's trying to level the playing field, and quite frankly, we were getting a little sloppy on that, where you almost had to have a pen and paper. Okay, there's a floppy 1, a crinkled 2, a dirty 4, and a missing 6 on that. So fairness is, when you go to the herd, you should expect to be able to read your numbers in short order. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry I took longer than I wanted to, but that brings us to the close. Hopefully we've covered everything. Remember, if you do have questions, absolutely we're at your service. So phone or she probably prefers emails, Tammy in the office, and she'll direct all your questions to the Director of Judges, Ken Crawford, and he'll subsequently get you the answer. Thank you so much for your time. Be sane, be fair, report the news. We're done.